Welcome back to 6 and 6, where we cover 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We begin today in Europe, where the first round of voting in the Romanian election was annulled by the country's highest court. From BBC, quote, "The first round was won by Călin Georgescu, an almost unknown far-right NATO skeptic who has previously praised Vladimir Putin. The court's decision comes after intelligence documents were declassified suggesting Georgescu benefited from a mass influence operation conducted from abroad to interfere with the results of the vote. Hours after the court's decision, Georgescu told a Romanian TV channel that the country's democracy was under attack, describing the verdict as a formalized coup d'etat." End quote. Next to South America, where the farmers of the region have struck a new deal with Europe. From Reuters, quote, "South America's agricultural sector, a key source of global food, celebrated on Friday as the regional Mercosur bloc and the European Union struck a free trade agreement. The agreement was reached after 25 years of negotiation in Uruguay's capital, Montevideo, that were attended by the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the leaders of Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Brazil, the 4 member states of the South American bloc," end quote. Though the process is only beginning, many are hopeful that when the agreement is ironed out, it will benefit all parties. Sailing across the Atlantic to Africa, where Ghana's election on Saturday has led to the re-election of the previous president, John Mahama, running this time as an outsider candidate. From BBC, Mahama won with 56.6% against 41.6% for Vice President Mohamedou Baumala. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your names, sir. Quote, "It is the biggest margin of victory in the country for 24 years. Although the election was generally peaceful, 2 people were shot dead on Saturday in separate incidents," end quote. Though Mohammed's first term was less than stellar, the populace hopes that this time will be different as they come out of the worst economic times in the last 15 years. We next turn our focus to North America, where Mexico is preparing for another Trump term, stepping up its protections against migrants flowing north and the illicit drug trade. From Reuters, Mexico is working on both issues in order to, quote, "come to the table to negotiate with obstacles," Rezando Gutierrez told outlet Inside U.S. Trade. Mexico has launched an offensive on contraband goods from Asia coming into the country, and officials seized a record amount of fentanyl as well. They have also detained thousands of migrants, vowing to prevent them from making it north. U.S. President Joe Biden thanked Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum and the country's military and law enforcement officials for seizing over 20 million doses of illicit fentanyl. Now to our most shocking story coming out of Syria, where the government of Bashar al-Assad has collapsed and he has actually fled the country. From BBC, quote, "There was traffic in the street, but shops were closed. People had gathered in the central Umayyad Square, overcome by an extraordinary end to more than 5 decades of authoritarian rule by the Assad regime, both father and son. Armed men were firing into the air in a constant cacophony of celebration. Quote, you can actually breathe. You can walk around. You can actually give your opinion. You can say what bothers you without being scared. So yes, there is change," end quote. And that quote specifically came from a citizen who had lived underneath the Assad regime. Once again, this is a very shocking story. It came out of absolutely nowhere. And you can see now, though many people are scared and there's chaos in the country, a lot of people are also feeling the first breaths of a open and free country in a long, long time. Finally, to New Zealand, where the government has cited excessive injury and inhumane practice when passing a law that is going to ban the racing of greyhounds in the country. From Reuters, quote, "The government on Tuesday introduced a bill with the support of the opposition Labour Party to prevent the unnecessary killing of racing dogs. It will introduce further legislation next year to make changes to existing laws to outlaw greyhound racing," Peter said. Greyhound Racing New Zealand chairman Sean Hannon said the decision was a devastating blow to an industry which had invested heavily in reform, end quote. And there are questions about further restrictions coming to different sort of racing industries, whether it be horses, Jack Russell, so on and so forth. We will continue to watch this one. It's actually very fascinating to see this sort of thing coming out of New Zealand, one of the places where greyhound racing was still allowed. And with all of that said, if you want to check out any of today's articles, you can go down to the description below that like and subscribe button. You can find all the stories there. You can also find this podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, and if you want to listen to the normal podcast, it's about 30 minutes. We're trying something new. We're doing a little bit shorter content, seeing if we can just focus on heavily on one topic. We're trying some things out. But if you want to hear that normal one that's mainly focused on U.S. politics, come back on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. If you want to hear the Twitter tirade, it comes out on at the same time most Tuesdays and Thursdays over at the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post it so that it's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit less scripted, a little bit less news oriented, and just kind of off the top of the head. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.